Okay. We're on the Harmony of the Gospels, part 31. When's it going to stop, right? Finish it already.
No, don't.
We're going to be going from Matthew 17, Luke 9, and Mark 9. So I got my fingers in all spots here. I'm going to go through this part slowly too, because there's an awful lot that you have to really pay attention to and ponder about. Mark 9, verse 14. And after returning to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and the scribes disputing with them. But he was away from the disciples, most of them, because this was after that transfiguration, right? He was only there with 3 of them. So when he got back to the rest of the group, the other disciples were in a hot dispute with the scribes. Now, the scribes are, the teachers of the law, right? These are the guys that are supposed to really know their stuff. And there's some kind of a dispute going on. How long did this transfiguration thing go on for? Who knows, right? It could have been a couple hours. Because they had to get to the mountain first, up, right? How long did it take to get there? And how long did it take for the vision to come and then for them to come back? In the meantime, while that was happening, behind the scenes, this was happening. His disciples were disputing with these scribes, with this great multitude. What was the dispute about? Anybody know before we get into it? No. Yeah, I know it's hard to remember everything about the Bible, right? So, let's get into it. Remember though, what's this dispute about? Go to Luke 9:37. Now it came to pass that on the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, on the next day, looks like it took a whole day, didn't it? Didn't come down until a day passed. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great multitude met him. There's this dispute going on. So it was going on for a long time. Who knows how long? Several hours at least, I'm guessing. Matthew 17, verse 14. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him, and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is insane, and suffers miserably, for he often falls into the fire, and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they were not able to heal him. Now, why could the disciples not heal this man?
Well, the man was possessed, but they
Right.
still should have been able to.
Why couldn't they?
I don't think that they really believed they could. I don't know, or they weren't. I don't know.
We've been going through this principle
They don't have
for
the faith
a couple of
to
months
do
now. The level of
it.
faith.
Yeah.
They had gone 2 by 2, right, to many different towns, and right, they went all by themselves. Well, 2. And they cast out demons, and they did all kinds of works, healing people, but they couldn't cast out this one. Now, what's going on? Remember now, the disciples are having a dispute with the scribes. So what do you think that could have been about? Well, this child here was possessed by a certain type of demon, and the disciples tried to cast him out, but couldn't. Do you think the scribes witnessed that failure? And what do you think they would have done then? Because remember, these scribes and the Pharisees, they were hostile now to Jesus and his disciples. They were looking for ways to draw them out, to find fault with them, to destroy their ministry, weren't they? Aha! See, you guys can't, what? If you're working with God, why can't you cast out this demon? What's wrong with you? And the disciples, they had no answer. They're like, wow. You can imagine the scene, what was going on. Meanwhile, this poor kid is possessed by this demon that won't come out. Did you ever look at that this way before? I didn't, because I never read the account fully in a Harmony of the Gospels way. You know, when you do it in this way, it's amazing actually what comes to light, especially when you've got, I mean, part 31 now, so we've got all kinds of background. It's a story that's continuous, that's ongoing. When you read something one day and you go somewhere else, and now you're in Daniel, for instance. I mean, you lose the context of the whole thing. The context is not just parts of chapter 17 or parts of chapter 21. The context is the entire thing, the whole story. That is the context, and that's the greater context of the whole thing. And you have to keep that in mind when you're reading anything from the Bible, is that there's a greater context. And it all fits together. All of it. Right from Genesis right to Revelation. There's a theme there. And there's a greater context. It all fits together. And you can only understand the greater context by understanding that there is a greater context. Right? You have to figure that out. And the only way you can figure it out is by lots of study like this. And you have to put it all together. And it's amazing what comes out of it when you see it like that. It's absolutely amazing. The scribes couldn't see it, and they're supposed to be the teachers of the law, the leaders. They couldn't see it because they didn't have the Holy Spirit. They didn't actually have an open communication with the Father at all. They really didn't. And you have to have that in order to get this kind of context. So how long was this going on before Jesus arrived? Who knows, but we know that they came down a day later. So it was a long time. Now, when this man said this to Jesus, that your disciples were not able to cast him out, is it any wonder why Jesus responded the way he does? Right? We'll get to that. There's a certain response that Jesus says in response to that statement. Why couldn't the disciples cast him out? We've got to finish the harmony of all this together. Luke 9:38. And a man in the crowd immediately cried out, saying, Master, I beseech you. I beseech. There's that word again. Begging, imploringly. Please. He's probably down on his knees and sobbing. Look upon my son, because he is my only child. And a spirit takes him, and he suddenly cries out, and it throws him into convulsions with foaming, and then departs from him with difficulty, leaving him bruised. And I besought your disciples that they might cast it out, but they were not able. Now what's interesting about this particular demon is that he enters this guy at will. And then he leaves him too. He comes and goes. Comes and goes as he wants. And when he does, he's very violent with him, trying to kill him. Now, you picture this. This is a strong thing. Pretty scary too. You wouldn't want to encounter something like that. And speaking of that, I mean, here again is another demon possession. How many have we encountered already in this? Where are they today?
That's my question.
Oh, they're out there. Oh, they're out there. Do you see what's happening in the world out there? I'll just say one word, terrorism. What's behind all that? What is actually behind all that? The powers and principalities that we wrestle against, we can't see. We can't see these creatures visibly, but we see what they're doing in this world. That Jordanian pilot that was burned alive in that cage, you know about that, don't you? Horribly, slowly, agonizingly, cruelly. What power drives that? Where are these things today? Oh, they're out there. Absolutely they are. And they're getting worse. They're getting worse. They realize the time is short, and they're doing everything they can to destroy, to cause chaos. And it's bloody scary. Mark 9, verse 15. And all the people who saw him ran to him at once in great amazement. There he is. He's back. Right? And saluted him. And he asked the scribes, "What are you disputing with them?" So he's challenging these scribes now. What are you disputing with them? Ah, the dispute again. Then one from the multitude said, "Master, I brought my son who has a dumb spirit to you." Okay, this is the context. This is what was going on. "For wherever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and gnashes his teeth, and is withering away. And I spoke to your disciples in order that they might cast it out, but they did not have the power." What do you mean they didn't have the power? Did they have the power to do this? Absolutely they did. They had God's power. Why couldn't they use it? What was hindering them? They had the ability. They had the power necessary. It was available to them. Absolutely it was. What was missing in the disciples here? What's missing in our life sometimes when we can't overcome something? When we struggle with something? Why couldn't they do it?
Lack of faith.
Yes, it's lack of faith. Absolutely it's lack of faith. It's lack of belief. It's lack of confidence. Jesus Christ never lacked any confidence. Ever. Not once. 100% faith. He knew. 100%. And he expects us to have that same faith. And he's astonished at our unbelief. Absolutely astonished at it. Despite the miracles that he did. Look back at the Exodus. How many plagues did he rain down on Egypt?
10.
Yeah, lots. 10. And he did that so that it would be a powerful witness that I am the Lord and there's none like me. And Pharaoh could have released them after the first one. But God wanted to make sure that he established his authority, his power, his greatness as a huge witness forever. Not just to the Egyptians, but to the world. There is none like me. And that power was available to the disciples, and they couldn't access it because they still doubted. They still doubted. Doubt. How much doubt do we have? How many times do you doubt every day about something?
It's usually when things get rough, we start doubting. We have a lot of faith when things are going good.
Oh yeah.
But when things start getting rough,
That's when you're tested. That's when your faith gets tested when things are rough. And that's why things get rough.
how do you build character and faith through adversity?
You can't build faith and character when everything is smooth sailing. You're weak when that happens. Look at the very rich and the kids that grow up in that kind of environment. They lack nothing. They know no troubles, hardly any anyway. Well, they have troubles and their lives are messed up quite a bit. It's a sad thing. Sad thing. And that's why Christ said also, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. Because there's no root there. There's no character. There's no foundation. There's nothing there. Because they lack nothing. They lack the most important thing. Well, I'm in that statement. The most important thing that they lack is God. Adversity is a good thing. Adversity is a good thing. When things go bad for you, and you wonder, why is this happening? I pray such and such amount of times, I do this and that, and I'm trying to walk the good walk, and why is this happening to me at this precise time? You might wonder that, right? I've doubted like that myself. It happens for a reason. It happens for a reason. Look what Jesus went through. It happens for a reason. Or is it any wonder what this dispute was about with the scribes? Is it any wonder? The scribes recognized the disciples' fault. And they latched onto that in front of this multitude. You guys are supposed to be followers of God, right? You're supposed to have God with you, right? Yeah, where's the evidence now? And the disciples had no answer. Luke 9:41. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverted generation, how long shall I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. Faithless and perverted generation. Matthew 17:17. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you in your unbelief? How long shall I bear with you in your unbelief? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it departed from him. And the boy was healed from that hour. Jesus had to do it himself. Luke 9:42, and as he was approaching, the demon flung him down and threw him into convulsions. This demon saw Jesus approaching him and knew immediately who he was, and immediately tried to kill this guy again because he knew what was about to happen. The disciples couldn't do it, but this demon knew that Jesus could do it. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the child and gave him back to his father. Mark 9, verse 19. And he answered him, saying, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me. Then they brought him to him. But when the spirit saw him, it immediately threw him into convulsions. When he immediately saw Jesus, it immediately threw this guy into convulsions. And he fell down on the ground and began rolling about and foaming at the mouth. He knew. This is Jesus Christ. I know what's about to happen, is what this demon is thinking. And he went about trying to destroy this guy one more time. This is very important. Jesus on many occasions told his disciples that they were perfectly capable of doing what he did. Perfectly capable. If they had enough faith. If they had enough belief. And when they failed at whatever it was, Jesus' response to them every single time was, "Where is your faith? Why do you not believe? Why are you doubting? What is wrong with you? How long do I have to suffer with this?" The whole problem is your level of unbelief. That's the problem. The greater context of this whole book, this whole Bible, is faith. Faith. That's the main principle, the main theme. He who believes in me shall live. The demon knew that his disciples lacked this faith and therefore refused to leave this boy. "You can't make me go. Who are you? You don't even believe that you can make me go. You got no power over me." Think about this for a minute. It's very important. Belief and faith is where it is all at. Not how well am I doing at keeping the law. The Pharisees did that. The scribes did that. They were very good at keeping the letter of the law very well and tithing even the smallest thing. Big deal. Who cares? So you're good at keeping the law. What good has it done for you? It's made you pompous and arrogant and a big windbag. Where's your faith? And I'm not belittling the law, absolutely not. You have to do just like the scribes and Pharisees did in keeping the law, but not be arrogant about it and not thinking that just because you're doing it properly like that, that everything's rosy. Where is your faith? I demand mercy, not sacrifice. I don't care how well you keep my law. Where is your heart? Where is your heart? We forget that as Christians. Yes, we do. How much infighting is there in the Christian community? How easy is it for other Christians to be offended by other Christians? It's bloody ridiculous. You got to be careful who you associate with. Because somebody will say, "Oh, I don't like that particular group or that particular church, so if you guys are associated in any way, shape, or form with those guys, then I want nothing to do with you." What kind of nonsense is that? That's ridiculous. It's absolutely brutal. And yet Christians do this all the time. That's not a family when you infight like that. Jesus stood up to that kind of nonsense. And so did the disciples. They called it out for what it was. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Your Christian brothers and sisters are your family. And this infighting with the churches of God has saddened me very much. I don't understand why. I understand why, but I don't understand why. Where is your faith? Where is your belief? What's important? Mark 9:21. And Jesus, as he was looking upon him, nope, I was wrong. It's chapter 10 here. Mark 9:21. And he asked his father, "How long a time has this demon been with him?" And he said, "From childhood." Good grief. From childhood. What do we know about demon possession? Generally. Generally. You allow it to happen. You open yourself up to it. Generally. How could a child be possessed by something like this? Unless it was very powerful and it could do almost whatever it wanted to. That's pretty scary from childhood. We read over that and we don't contemplate really what that means. How powerful some of these things out there are. Some of them aren't very strong at all, and others are downright nasty. Downright nasty. They're nothing to be played with. How on earth can such a thing happen to a child? Powerful. Powerful these things are, some of them. It could come and go as it pleased, and it did. With apparently very little resistance at all. Verse 22, for it often throws him both into the fire and into the water, that it might destroy him. But if you have the power to do anything, look what he's asking. He's talking to Jesus Christ. And he says, but if you have the power to do anything, have compassion on us and help us. If. I gotta pause there for a moment. I mean, he's talking to Jesus Christ. If you have the power to overcome this demon, please. I mean, he's begging Jesus. But he's also revealing the kind of faith or lack of faith that he has. And how does Jesus respond to this question of if you have the power? Like he always does. Jesus said to him, if you can believe, if you can believe, all things are possible to the one who believes. All things. So what is not possible if you believe? Nothing. Not a thing. So what's the problem? Our level of belief, our level of faith is the problem. It's the whole problem. And the father of the little child cried out at once, and he responded appropriately too, saying with tears, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. He believed. That's why he was there begging Jesus himself. But he also knew that he didn't have enough belief. Help me with my unbelief. That's what this whole account is about here. Help me with my unbelief. That's a powerful statement. And that's a good way to pray too, right? Help me with my unbelief. Help me with my doubt. Help me to strengthen my faith. Jesus put the fate of what would happen next into this father's hands. He said, if you believe, if you can believe, all things are possible. And he left it up for the father to say something else. And this guy responded properly. The father's initial response said he didn't have enough belief or faith either. He was asking Jesus, if you have the power, please. But he responded very well with asking Jesus to help him with his unbelief. This is one of the more powerful encounters in the Gospels. with a matter of faith. It is. Then Jesus, seeing that the multitude was running together, right? The multitude is getting, they're starting to congregate quite a bit. And this man responded to Jesus properly, and Jesus wanted to deal with this matter before the multitude got too big. Because it's not a show, right? He's not there to show off. He's there to encourage faith. Most people wanted to see a show. Then Jesus, seeing that the multitude was running together, rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You deaf and dumb spirit, I command you to come out of him, and you are not allowed to go into him anymore." Because this guy could come and go as he pleased. Who's to say that once Jesus cast him out of this guy, that he couldn't come back into him? Because he came and went as he wanted to anyway. If Jesus cast him out, well then when Jesus left and went away, I'll just go right back in again, wouldn't he? But now he can't. Because Jesus said, you're not allowed to go into him anymore. That's power. That is power. That's a big statement there also. This is one of the big daddies of demons. And Jesus had to command him in this way, in this manner. Let's hope we never encounter one of these guys. I don't want to. And after crying out and throwing him into severe convulsions, again, even after Jesus gave him this command, he still resisted. He fought to stay in this guy. But he couldn't. He had to come out. And he did. But not after crying and throwing him into severe convulsions, trying to kill him one last time. That's crazy to contemplate. This thing finally came out, and he became as dead, so much so that many said he is dead. What happened to this guy in these final moments when Jesus commanded this spirit to leave him? And how long did he convulse like that before he finally came out, even when Jesus himself commanded him? Let's do a sidetrack to Daniel for a minute. Daniel 10. Daniel 10 and verse 1. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Bethshazar, I think. Another one of those names I can't pronounce. Something like that. You did better than I did. And the message was true, but the time appointed was long, and he understood the message and had understanding of the vision. In those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant food, neither did flesh or wine enter my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all, until 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. Daniel was praying and fasting hard, intensely, for 3 weeks. He needed an answer from God. And 3 weeks had passed. What was going on? And in the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river which is Tigris, then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man was clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. I think that's how you say it. His body also was like beryl, and his face looked like lightning, and his eyes were like lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet in color were like polished bronze. And the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. Now the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great dread fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone, and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my face turned deathly pale, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words. And when I heard the sound of his words, then I was in a deep sleep on my face, and my face was toward the ground. And behold, a hand touched me, which set me trembling upon my knees and the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright. For you I am now sent. And when he had spoken these words to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. I'm not talking about a man here. I'm not talking about a man withstanding this angel, who was probably Gabriel. Then lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been there alone with the kings of Persia. This man fought, this angel fought 21 days to get into Persia to talk with Daniel, and could not do it. He was being withstood by something very powerful. And Michael had to come and help him. That's crazy to think about. These are tough things. And they're nasty. And where were they? In Persia. Where there was what at the time? The great empire of the earth at the time. And these guys were there. And what do you think they were doing? Just hanging out? These guys don't just hang out. They're doing stuff. They're doing nasty stuff. And they're doing nasty stuff on the earth today. And we see it. We see it in our newspapers. We see it on TV. You know, one of the biggest arguments I hear sometimes from atheists is, oh, we hear about these demon possessions in the Bible and, blah, 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 right? And now we understand what it is. People are just insane. Yes, there are some people that actually have real insanity issues, and they do have psychological problems, but there's also this. Those who have no faith, none whatsoever, just label it as insanity. Oh, and it's insanity. Absolutely it is. But there's something else behind it. Mark 9, verse 27. But Jesus looked at them and said, with men it is impossible. Oh, I went to the wrong one again, chapter 10 here. Mark 9, verse 27. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. He wasn't dead after all. And when he came into a house, his disciples asked him apart, why were we not able to cast it out? The answer is obvious. And they couldn't get it. And in fact, Jesus already gave them the answer. Already. He said, you faithless and perverted generation, how long do I have to suffer with you? Faithless. They didn't get that. Oh, he's giving us another lecture. They don't understand. They didn't understand. Then he said to them, this kind cannot be made to go out by anything except prayer and fasting, which takes intense faith and belief, the kind of which Daniel did for 3 weeks. to overcome. A long time. Some of these guys are the worst sort, and you don't want to have any part with them. Matthew 17, verse 21. No, verse 19. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why were we not able to cast it out?" And Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief." And it also takes lots of prayer and fasting to strengthen your belief, to strengthen your faith. For truly I say to you, if you have faith as a tiny mustard seed, as much as that, you shall say to this mountain, "Remove from here," and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. That's an amazing comparison. The level of faith that it could take to make a mountain move is like a little mustard seed. You got to ponder that for a little bit. Would Jesus ever say anything that wasn't true? No. Faith is something that is tangible. It's something that you can accumulate. It's something that can grow in you. It's something that can build in you. And when it does, it's very powerful. Very powerful. The only thing that prevents it is your doubt. Is your doubt. But this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. And that is something, those are useful tools. Prayer and fasting are useful tools to build faith, to build discipline, to remove doubt. It takes time, it takes effort. And while they were dwelling in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men. And they shall kill him, but the third day he shall be raised up." And they were exceedingly sorrowful. They didn't understand that statement either. In Mark 9, verse 30. And after leaving there, they went through Galilee. And he desired that no one know it, because he was teaching his disciples privately. And he said to them, "The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, but he shall arise on the third day, after he is being killed." Now they did not understand the saying, but they were afraid to ask him about it. That's kind of astonishing that they couldn't understand that as well. But there was a reason. There was a reason. Luke 9, verse 43. And all were astonished at the majesty of God when they saw that this demon finally was cast out. And all were astonished at the majesty of God. Another huge statement. At the majesty of God. Think of that word for a bit. Astonished. You got to put yourself in that place, witnessing this. What would it have been like for you to be right at the Red Sea when it parted, and you were walking through on dry land with huge walls of water on both sides? Would you not be astonished at the majesty of God when you saw that? And yet a few short weeks later, they're grumbling about, what are we going to have to eat? Where's water? Moses was on the mountain for 40 days. And God was, giving him the commandments and also giving him instructions on how to build this tabernacle and the ark and right now. And within 40 days, they'd already made a golden calf and started worshiping it, saying, "This is our God that brought us out of Egypt." 40 days. They saw those plagues in Egypt. The death angel. The destruction of Pharaoh's army and of the land. Just over a month later, they're worshiping a calf? A golden calf? That's astonishing. Is it any wonder that Jesus is astonished at our unbelief? What does it take? A resurrection of the dead? What does it take? And while everyone was wondering about all the things that Jesus had done, wondering about all the things, they were astonished. And they were wondering about it. They couldn't figure it out. All the things that Jesus had done, he said to his disciples, "Let these words sink deep into your ears. For the Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men." But they did not understand this saying, for it was concealed from them, so that they would not perceive it. And they were afraid to ask him about this saying. Jesus tried to convey to them. It wasn't the first time either. He told them several times already that he must die and he would be raised 3 days later. And they never got it, but it was purposely concealed from them by the Father. It wasn't their time yet to understand that. Not until those things actually transpired. That's astonishing too. No one knows exactly what the Father is doing. Sometimes not even Jesus. He even said himself, "No one knows the day or the hour, not even I, only my Father." So we can't understand everything. Some things are concealed from us. And they're concealed from us for a reason. And I don't know the entire reason because it's concealed from me. So don't ask me.
Darn it.
Right? Darn it. Right. But I do know the Father has a plan and he knows exactly what's going on. Our job is to work on our what?
Faith.
Our faith.
A+.
Yes.